Oh, this is gonna be a good one.
The privilege discussion, like that's a great conversation for you to have with your child. But I don't think that taxpayer-funded hatred should be something that we allow in our schools.
Okay, bro, real talk though, like brother to brother. Teaching white privilege does not inherently mean black people are less. Factually incorrect.
Ooh.
SATs.
All right.
No, wait.
We're getting into it.
Gotta be careful.
I'm Mina Durson. I'm a correspondent here at By Smullyz, and we're gonna talk about education today. We tried to bring a very diverse mix of voices here. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to represent every single opinion out there when it comes to education, but we are really thankful for your time and for your perspectives. I also have 2 kids in school, so have experienced some of this from the parent side as well. So let's just start really broadly. What's the purpose of education?
I think the purpose of education is twofold. One, to help build and support the individual, but also help build and support society as a whole. Because even though you may not have a kid in education, you pay taxes to public school because we as a society depend on and need education for society to work.
I think the purpose of education is to educate and not indoctrinate. And I think that in a lot of ways we've strayed from that in the original purpose of what it's supposed to be.
I think it should be intelligence and character. I think you should be able to understand the world around you and understand who you are and your purpose and try to make the world a better place. I think that it has to be a mix of the skills, memorizing the formulas, understanding the world around you, but then also what to do with it.
And just to go off that, the idea that education, you have to balance the importance of memorizing the quadratic formula while simultaneously addressing social and political issues respectively. So children have both the know-how, general knowledge, and also kind of self-awareness and character so they're able to develop their own opinions.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of education is to understand the world that you exist in and use that understanding as a means for creating change or even understanding yourself on a deeper level.
I believe the purpose is simply just to prepare the individual to be successful in the society that they exist in.
Critical thinking, learn how to live out your full potential so you can be independent, and everything else really flows from there.
The purpose of education is to prepare children for the real life and also make sure that they are literate.
So I think the purpose is to raise the next generation of leaders. And when you think about what you want your leaders to be like, you want them to be knowledgeable, and you want them to be compassionate, you want them to be self-aware, you want them to understand the best way to move forward, not just for themselves personally, but for their whole community.
When we talk about who's doing the educating, who should decide what's being taught?
Parents. I think that parents should have a huge say in what's going on in the classroom because it's their kids, not ours. As a public school teacher 15 years, I was always aware that these are not my children. We have to make sure that we're respecting parents and their beliefs and their values.
I think the Constitution agrees with that.
Yes.
Here in America, ranging back to the early 1900s, plenty of Supreme Court cases have ruled in that favor that it is the parents' right, ultimately, to decide a child's education, medical needs, etc.
I would push back, though, and say that there does need to be collaboration, right? I completely respect your idea of it is not our job as educators to put forth a belief in front of children, right? That includes not perpetuating parents' beliefs in the classroom as well. In my opinion, that would be keeping a non-biased viewpoint, simply presenting issues, and then allowing kids to decide for themselves.
I would agree that I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. The way that we decide curriculum in Texas is that work groups comprised of community members, educators, parents, even in some cases students and public service officials come together to draft curriculum plans, and then it's ultimately decided on by our State Board of Education, which has a lot of kind of assistance from parents as well. So I think that kind of format can be really effective because it also empowers students to become involved in the fate of their education. And as a student myself, I think that that's incredibly important because our perspectives need to be heard as well.
The voices of parents need to be heard in that equation. But unfortunately, what we've seen recently is that parents' voices have been demonized in this process. You've seen parents who've criticized local school boards labeled terrorists simply for caring about the quality of their education that their child is receiving. These teachers are temporary caretakers. When they come back home, it's the parent who has to explain that this is this radical belief that was put in front of you. This was this idea that you've never been raised around, that parent.
What are you talking about specifically? I feel like you're attacking a point, but you're not saying what that point is, and it's kind of fucking with me a little bit. What are you mad at right now, bro? Come on, just be very deliberate with it. Just be very abrupt, very open What are you mad at?
Parent now has to explain. And at the end of the day, that isn't just confined to a classroom. Now it's bleeding into their upbringing, and there's only one person responsible for their upbringing, and it's the parents. It's not the educator, it's not the teacher, it's their parents.
I like the idea of the collaboration, and obviously parents' voices belong at that table. I also like the emphasis on students having a say in this, and also other people adults that aren't parents. I'm invested in that too, even though I don't have children of my own. And I hear what you're saying about having to, like, parents needing to confront or address, I guess, like what kids are learning at school. But giving kids the exposure to other ideas or other things that they wouldn't be exposed to otherwise is, I think, part of what's gonna help raise the next generation of people that are able to look outside their own lived experience.
But I think that oftentimes those different ideas are presented in the classroom as a student as the only idea. When you're being taught that, oh, there's this many genders or anything like this, where you haven't been exposed to that in your household, it's being presented as like the end all be all. When it actually isn't. It's about educating and not indoctrinating. As long
Oh my God, this is a little young Republican in the making, isn't it? Oh my God. Oh, did you see how he threw the genders thing in there? Are you mad at trans people, bro? I feel like a little bit of...
There's, this many genders or anything like this where you haven't been exposed to that in your own household. It's being presented as like the end-all be-all when it actually isn't. It's about educating and not indoctrinating.
There's a couple of trans people on that panel, so it's going to be very interesting because that little jab didn't go unnoticed to them, bro.
As long as that is presented as a counterpoint to, well, there's people who believe this, but there's also people who believe this, that's okay. The reality of it is that in most classrooms across the country, that isn't what's happening.
And to piggyback off of that, one side is labeled as a bigot, white supremacist, homophobic. There's a lot of parents in America that are Christian or, they believe in two genders, gender binary. And if you say that as a teacher, especially, you could be labeled as homophobic. So there isn't this unbiased classroom because there's one side that can't really be, as loud as the other side without risk of, losing our jobs even.
But you two are kind of the ones that brought in the conflict of like, there is an indoctrination going on and only one side it has this opinion and this side is not allowed to talk and we have to be quiet. When really you guys are actually the loudest in regards to this issue thus far, right?
Right now, yes,
so,
in
yeah,
this room,
so I
yes.
wouldn't necessarily say that that's the quiet. What I would say though is like, I do want to push away if possible, but I'd love for you to hear this, right? Is that idea of someone sees me and they go, oh, you're one of those that teach that there's 72 different types of gender. Desmond Fambrini, he, him, gender fluid, bisexual. My students do not know this because it doesn't come up because I'm a learning specialist and it's my job to educate and teach a curriculum, right? Now, if I'm asked directly by a parent or if there's confusion, oh, why do you wear makeup? Same reason why girls do, because it's fun for me. It doesn't need to be this very controversial, I'm gonna mess with this child's upbringing, they're gonna go home and they're gonna turn into a gender fluid and they're gonna think there's 72 genders.
I think that's a question you say you should go ask your parents about how they feel about that.
Well, so,
And
okay.
Teachers are supposed to teach reading, math, science, the things that are actually going to make them contributing members of society. Answering a child's questions about whether or not men or women should be wearing makeup or not is, I don't think, within that realm.
Okay, so you said science, right? So we're talking about a physical science, we're talking about human anatomy and biology here. So a child says, I thought boys could not wear makeup. I have an X and Y chromosome and I'm wearing makeup. I could factually answer that without indoctrinating with any opinion.
But it's in no way scientific, your answer to that question.
How is that not scientific?
I would say maybe cultural or it's a perception or an opinion, but it's in no way scientific.
Anyone else? I am a chatty person, so I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to let's see if anyone else has something to say.
Don't.
So I just have one question for
push
you.
back.
Because not all homes are welcoming or open to
safe.
conversation or safe. So how do we balance that?
I think that what we're saying is that there's certain conversations that are not to be had with a teacher.
Come
and
on.
I think that the argument that a lot of people on the right and conservatives are making is that we just don't feel as if actors of the state should be having conversations that are taxpayer-funded conversations with children about conversations that have not come up in their own households. And to that point, if you can't talk about God in the classroom, why can we talk about every gender under the sun, right? I think that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in. If we are banning those conversations, we've banned those a long time ago, then how can we have these conversations just because they belong to a different side of the political aisle?
So I think we actually talk about God in the classroom all the time, right?
Yeah.
Who's taught religion? Who's taught world religions? Who's taught like history in the way that, Puritans, and that's okay, because God is part of the fabric of history and whatever else.
We talk about it from a development perspective. This is how Christianity originated.
I understand.
This is how Islam originated.
I
We don't
understand.
talk about like, this is what this gender is, and this is if you feel this way, then there's gender
You're
affirmation.
really
therapy.
mad about this gender thing, bro. You've got a lot of hatred in you about this. Are you one of those dudes that goes to pride rallies and is just like yelling, fuck you, just yelling slurs? Are you one of those guys? Like, come on, bro, because it seems like this is what you've been trying to attack the whole time. Like, you were really mad that this wasn't a debate about the gender question or whatever you fuckers call it. Like, because you've been trying to push at this gender thing, like, for the last, 10 minutes, and the video's only been 8 minutes long.
All those things.
I think you actually bring up a really good parallel of, like, I feel comfortable and I feel like it is okay to talk about identity issues the same way we talk about God. Not indoctrinating anyone, not telling this is what you have to be or you have to believe, but saying this is something that some people believe.
But in the sense of gender identity, I don't see that parallel. How is that making someone more literate, more successful?
What I hear you saying is that learning about different gender identities does not make somebody a more considerate, well-rounded person, but learning about different religions does make you a more considerate, well-rounded.
I'm saying that is a part of history. I don't understand where
okay.
gender identity falls within what we should be teaching.
Religious history and God comes into play in terms of history, cool. But don't gay people and trans people too? It's not like I'm the first transgender person to ever walk this earth. Like, there are trans people that were, and gay people who were part of major movements in this country, like from the civil rights movement to the feminist movement to, obviously Stonewall. Like, isn't that part of history too?
Let's just take a step back. So just show
Come on!
Who here thinks
What?
public school is the best
You
option?
let him answer the fucking question! Oh my fucking God, like you just fucking had him cornered. That's literally like those fucking rounds where it's like you got the guy fucking backed up, you're smacking him, and then the ref fucking calls the bell, and you're like, what? You fucking had that! 2 more seconds and he would have been...
Option for kids. Okay. And who thinks private school is the best option for kids? Who thinks homeschool is the best option for kids? And then some of you guys didn't raise your hands at all.
It's so challenging to pick one right answer for that, because essentially what you're asking is, who do you trust the most with your children? Who do you trust to give them the cultural values that I have, and then fill in the gaps where I don't necessarily know the answer, but I trust that they're experts and are going to give my children the attention that they need in order to develop so that they can be a better version of themselves?
If I had to choose one, it's public school. It is the best tool we have to give everybody a chance at a good education.
Why didn't you raise your hand for
no
public
matter
school
where
then?
you come from, how much
The extra value.
The feminists and gay people who
of hands. Who here thinks public school is the best option for kids?
Oh, she did raise her hand.
Okay. And who thinks private school is the best option for kids? Who thinks homeschool is the best option for kids? And then some of you guys didn't raise your hands at all.
It's so challenging where I don't
had to choose one.
So why did they go to her?
School. It is the best tool we have to give everybody a chance at a good education, no matter where you come from, how much money you have. Public schools, where not everybody thinks the same and people are coming from all walks of life, is a good microcosm of that global experience, where you can learn critical thinking skills and learn how to be a good community member, because not everybody looks like you or thinks like you.
Kali, you were shaking your head.
Oh, well, first of all, our schools are more segregated ever than our public schools, especially in blue states. New York and California have the most segregated schools. And on top of that, we are in a place...
How the fuck are our schools segregated? Bitch, are you from California, New York? How the fuck? Get the fuck out of here.
Where our public schools are not safe, especially the last 20 years. And I just don't see why sending our kids to these environments where it's unsafe. We also used to be, because I used to be on the left, we used to be against the institutionalization of our children. These kids are being institutionalized, having these places where there's 2,000, 3,000 kids. I'm okay with public school, but the problem with it is that it's become an environment where it's almost like the school to prison pipeline. We used to talk about that in the 90s. We're not talking about that anymore. And I think that's something that parents need to wake up about, and America needs to wake up about, the institutionalization of our children.
I talk about the school to prison pipeline all day, every day. And I hear what you're saying, that it's terrible, that there are parents who are sending their kids to schools that are not safe. However, what about the parents that don't have a choice? Like, I'm thinking about like the most marginalized community when I said public schools here, because I agree with you, the public schools have a lot of work to do to become the safe places where our kids are not in institutions where they're ignored or not giving the services they need. And also, for the people that don't have a choice and that is the only option their kids have, I just believe that's worth fighting for. That's why I said public
Absolutely.
schools.
I'm a big advocate for school choice.
Well, why don't we just show of hands? Who believes in school choice?
Can you just specify like what do you mean
So
by that?
that's where parents can apply the money that they pay to taxes. They get vouchers, and they can put that into any school that they want. It's very popular in red states right now, and a lot of blue states are against it, especially teachers' unions are against it, because it's taking money away from the public schools and creating more of a competitive market.
Right. That's why I wouldn't raise my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Sometimes with school choice, it gets
That's
a
why I
little bit
wouldn't
tricky,
raise my
right?
hand.
I had my first class, had, the first day, I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19.
Yeah, I love when she explains some shit like this. She doesn't realize how dumb it sounds. And when your eyes never blink, when you don't blink and you explain something, that makes you look just that much crazier. Not gonna lie.
They get vouchers, and they can put that into any school that they want. It's very popular in red states right now. And school choice.
Well, why don't we just show of hands?
What is school
Who believes in
choice?
school choice?
Can you specify like what do you mean
So
by
that's
that?
where parents can apply the money that they pay to taxes. They get vouchers, and they can put that into any school that they want. It's very popular in red states right now, and a lot of blue states are against it, especially teachers' unions are against it, because it's taking money away from the public schools and creating more of a competitive market.
Right. That's why I wouldn't raise my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fucking stupid. It's like, yeah, no. I mean, we would basically just take all the money out of, you know, the marginalized schools. What little money they do get, we basically pull that away, right? And give it to basically the more, like, I'm guessing it would go to the parents who actually would vote, because, like, or who would get those fucking vouchers, or who would be able to pay taxes. You know, like, I guess if you're an illegal immigrant, you're fucked. Or you're the children of an illegal immigrant, you're fucked, I should say.
Yeah, I understand.
Sometimes with school choice, it gets a little bit tricky, right? I had my first class, the first day, I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19, because 6 parents switched out of the class because they saw me, and they were like, there's no freaking way, before I even got a word in.
As a parent, I would want to know, like, do you not think that that is okay or they're right to withdraw when they see you? Because ultimately, you're probably an excellent educator.
I appreciate that.
I have no doubt about that, but I think we get into muddy waters when we start trying to take that choice away from the parent.
Do I think that it is okay for a parent to see me and go, not around my kid? No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line, because you are, for lack of better words, discriminating against me openly. It's like seeing a black teacher and being like, there's no way. It is the same. It is the same.
It's
Not
still
quite.
the right of the parent to make that decision as to whether or not they want their child to learn from you.
Okay.
Like, it's still that parent's right. Like, you can disagree with their motivations, their motives, their ideas,
Would you
but
say
it
that-
is still their child.
This started around school choice. Even if you want to decide on a different learning environment for your kid, the people that do not have the option to send their child to a different place, the bar should not be so low. And that's my concern with school choice, is that sometimes people think that if everyone flees to the suburbs, who is teaching in these schools where everyone has decided they don't want their tax dollars going to? And that's one of the big concerns. With funding of education being the way that it's set up, it essentially makes it so that the people that are stuck with these as their options don't end up with as good a school.
No, I have
And
not.
Everyone deserves to have their kid go to a good school.
Well, if there's school choice, they won't be stuck with those options. They can have other options. That's the whole point of that. Also, it is the school district's job to appropriately use those budgets. Most of the budget in the schools aren't going to the teachers. We got cafeteria workers, janitors, all of these people that are getting paid.
It used to be 9 out of 10 people that were employees of schools and districts were teachers. Now it's 50-50.
Yes.
So there is some mismanagement of funds in this country. We actually fund our kids really well.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Too many administrators.
Just to go back a little bit to like when you guys were raising your hands about the different choices, you raised your hand for homeschooling. Can you talk us through like why do you think homeschooling is the best option?
If we look at the history of this country, a lot of people were homeschooled. A lot of our founders were homeschooled. Like they they only went to school till 3rd grade, a lot of them. And I think what has happened is parents have decided that the government is going to do a better job at raising their children than themselves. We have also come to a place where school is taking up the majority of our day. And we have this mistrust of parents that they can't educate their own children. And I think that that's wrong. I think that a lot of parents, and if you look at homeschool data, like my friend Phil right here, he's got 7 kids and he's homeschooling them all. And actually homeschool kids are turning out really well.
I think you bring up a lot of very valid points, but I have to say, and I just want your opinion on this, I would never homeschool my own kids. And I want my kids to be smarter than me, than I ever was. How am I going to have a child that is smarter and does better than I do if I'm their only teacher?
You grow alongside your child.
Okay.
I think as a teacher, I feel like
Okay,
I've
so
learned
this
the most
bitch-
in my life as a teacher.
that
Like, more so than
that okay was like, oh, she's a dumb bitch.
That is smarter and does better than I do if I'm their only teacher.
You grow alongside your child.
Okay.
I think
Oh, she's a dumb bitch. Okay, I see.
as a teacher, I feel like I've learned the most in my life as a teacher, like more so than in college. And, you know, so parents becoming teachers is actually good for them as well.
Okay.
And then even in the public schools, a lot of teachers are relying on the lesson plans. But speaking from experience, I got to give the credit where it's due. My wife does the homeschooling, and I've watched that process of her learning alongside, you know, to make sure when they ask these questions, I'm getting knowledge on the material as well so I can help you get through it. Nothing replaces that value, that bonding time that she gets to have with the kids.
I taught high school for 6 years, and I quit, and I'm a stay-at-home mom with my own kids. So we're a one-income family. We're lucky enough to be able to live off of my husband's salary. Would you say that most homeschool families have one parent working?
I do think the statistics show that that is the case.
It's like the only way to do it well.
Pretty much. And, you know, another misconception, though, is that they think it's a matter of income and homeschool families have to be rich and et cetera. And I think the average homeschool family makes like $65K.
I mean, you
so
have to be
the
a little
reality
rich
is
for
they're
that.
scaling back and making sacrifices for this lifestyle because they value what is coming out of it.
So let's just say that for the people that homeschool isn't an option, what is for so many people it's not, I do not think that school choice is the way to go about that, which I know is a lot of people's answer to that.
Can we just get Sean in here? What are your thoughts on this?
School choice gives people an exit ramp. You get to send your kid to a school that best fits what you think is best for their development. At the end of the day, it's kitchen table conversations about we've worked hard to raise a family. We want to spend our money in a way that best fits our child, best fits our family. And when you don't have school choice, you do make those trade-offs. There are real consequences there.
The school is considered one of those shared spaces, one of those last kind of shared spaces where you might bump into someone who maybe comes from a different background than you, has a different ideology than you. What do you lose if you homeschool and then you're not putting yourself in these kind of situations?
What you lose is negative influences. One of the biggest things I think when it comes to homeschool is keeping my kids away from your bad kids. We've went and taken our children to pride parades. And you know what I mean? We've been there, we've been loving, and we showed support to the people there. But at the same time, we explain our views on the matter that we believe marriage is between a man and a woman. And from experience, and talking to people, I understand that a lot of people who choose that lifestyle, it is based on trauma. A lot of were molested or sexually assaulted as children. So I don't think
Come on, bro. Oh, shit. God damn it. We got another one on the conservative side. I think marriage is between a man and a woman. Okay. All right, we got a homophobe. Cool, let's start with that one. Like, and then, like, you can just see, oh, bruh. I'm so sorry. You have to. Oh, it's like, ooh, we got a couple black conservatives on. We got three chocolate conservatives on here.
it's okay for me to teach to my children that this is something normal we ought to accept when it doesn't progress society. We would not be able to procreate if everybody were to choose that lifestyle. So I think it's okay for me as a parent to say, hey, this exists, that exists, but this is our view on it, and this is how we want to present it to them.
Do you think it's somewhat problematic that you're going like, well, this is our viewpoint, that marriage is between a man and a woman because we can't move society forward with gay couples. Like, we have factually proven that incorrect. I can actually tell you that gay parents on average make exceptional parents and do exceptional things with kids because they adopt, and they only adopt kids when they are financially capable, which actually makes kids of gay parents actually more successful and academically competent. So gay parents actually are very good at moving society forward, and we have the statistics to prove
Could
it.
that be a long-term solution, though, if a large population chose to choose that lifestyle? There would be no children to
so first of all,
adopt.
no one is choosing this lifestyle.
That's an opinion.
Okay,
It's not an
it's
opinion, it's just-
though. Okay, sorry.
Did you choose to be straight, sir?
I've been teaching for 15 years.
So
and
have I.
will say that there is some kids now that are going for that community that are doing it not out of a genuine, and there's pockets of them too. Like you'll notice like friend groups of girls that will all of a sudden decide that they're now trans.
The idea of LGBTQ being trending and the idea of teaching kids that being gay is a choice, those are two very
So I'll answer that. Yes, I chose to be straight. Absolutely.
So you could,
can you tell us about it?
You
consider
you
the
could
alternative?
be attracted to me if you wanted to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Let me explain.
Do you see the coping? Oh my fucking! You could be attracted to me if you wanted to be. Absolutely, like you motherfucker. You can hear the whole octave shift.
So you could.
He had to stand on his. You know what? I appreciate you, bro. I salute you for standing on your dumb shit. Not you.
Those are two very
So
different.
I'll answer that. Yes, I chose to be straight. Absolutely.
So you could.
You fucking dumbass. I salute you.
Could be attracted
I
to me if you
salute
wanted to
you.
be.
Absolutely.
You dumb. Oh my fucking God. Are you?
Yes, I chose to be straight. Absolutely.
So you could.
Can you tell us about it?
So you actually could be attracted to me if you wanted to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, you are oh man, you teach your kids? You could be attracted to me if you wanted to be. Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my fucking God, bro. Oh man. Oh, he is standing on his shit, bruh. He is like, some motherfuckers win debates with facts and like just general common sense. Other people just stand on their fucking dumb shit and stand on it hard. Like, absolutely, motherfucker. I chose to be straight. So you can fuck me if you wanted to. Yeah, I could. Come on, bro. Oh, I salute you, bro. Oh.
Yeah. Well, okay.
And let me explain. I have seen transgendered people who I thought were born female that were very attractive. I didn't know. Now, once I find out that that's not what you are, I am choosing not to pursue that. That's what I mean. So yes, you can be attracted to someone that is of another gender.
Let's talk about what do you think should be taught about gender identity in school? What do you think is being taught?
I want to go back to something you were saying earlier that's related to this about like you're seeing trends, and I am too, right? Last semester when I was teaching, I had a trans kid in every classroom, and I was like, whoa, when I started teaching,
It was one in school.
there was none, right?
One
And
in
I'm
the
like,
school,
this is wow.
And they
okay?
were really for it too.
And
they like went for it.
And I'm hearing you that is something I'm seeing too in the classrooms. Fair, okay. Now, I'm not gonna presume to be in the heads of those kids and to understand like what's real for them or whatever, but I will tell you this, historically speaking, a disproportionate number of kids who are gay, who are trans, who are any of the LGBTQI, fill in the letters, right? Didn't live to see adulthood. Maybe that's why we don't have an older generation of trans adults because
I attended a funeral of a trans.
God damn, spitting fucking facts at your ass. Oh, shit. Woo. Oh. Ooh, spitting facts.
Last month.
a lot of them didn't make it. And so when I hear about kids like feeling comfortable enough to try expressing something where maybe they wouldn't be able to do in other spaces. And I understand that maybe that's not what you want for your kids, but I'm thinking about the most marginalized and vulnerable people, and unfortunately, statistically, for our queer youth, disproportionately they fall in that category.
Mind you, with the whole concept of school choice, I'm all for parents who agree with what you're teaching, sending their children to you. I just think ultimately it should be within the parent to make that choice.
What do you think should be taught in sex ed?
I think it should be health education, yes. I taught middle school and high school, and they started giving it to my students in 7th grade, and I have students come back to me traumatized because I think sex ed has gone away from what it was. There are some lessons, like for example, they have a lesson where the kids in 3rd grade, in the New Jersey curriculum, there's a picture of a woman's spread eagle, and they're learning all the different body parts of the clitoris and the stuff. Every child is different. Some are not developmentally ready for this or mature enough for it.
I grew up with abstinence education.
That's pretty rough.
Where we didn't talk about sex ed until middle school, but mostly 10th grade and high school. But I think that middle school is far too late to be talking about sex ed. And it's not because I think that 2nd graders are, wanting to be promiscuous, but like having sex ed scaffolded because it is a preventative measure against sexual assault, often being done in the home.
Just because that happens in the home doesn't mean that we need to label all parents as not capable of teaching sex to their children and giving it to teachers.
But teachers, for a lot of children, are the only trusted adults, and it is incredibly dangerous to remove teachers who are trained professionals to deal with these crises in the home from the situation, and that's just like a funnel for child abuse.
I think a huge thing that's missing in education in the schools when it comes to sex ed is consent.
Yes.
That's not being taught at all, to my understanding. I never learned it in schools. And that creates consequences when you look at the situations that are going on here.
I think that we have such a hypersexualized
What
society.
the fuck did you do, bro?
When you look at the situations, from my understanding, I never learned it in schools, and that creates consequences when you look at the situations that are going on here.
What the fuck did you do, bro? What the fuck did you do?
I never learned it in schools, and that creates consequences when you look at the situations that are going on.
I feel like he met some
I think
consequences,
that we have such
bro.
a hypersexualized society. Obviously, kids are having sex younger. They're hooking up younger. It's just a reality.
Except for
would
you. I
rather
feel like you
those
haven't.
individuals, and also from a pro-life perspective, know how to have safe sex and preventative sex.
I feel like old mama back here might give you a little something if it's not your mama, because I think y'all look kind of alike. I don't know. You could be related, but also she could be looking at you like a cougar looking at a lamb. Who knows?
To prevent pregnancies than them to just go around willy-nilly just doing whatever they want.
So there's a lot of middle schoolers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are getting pregnant at earlier ages, and we're starting to rank like the highest nationally in terms of middle school pregnancies. And that's because a lot of
Hey, don't talk to her though, bro. I'm gonna be real with you, because she gonna leave you on red. All right, don't do it. She's nice, down to earth, very cute. Listen to me. I see what you're thinking. Like, man, I should get her number. Man, I should see if she wants to go. Look, don't do it. She will leave your ass on red. Don't follow her on Instagram and then try to, well, let me hit you on the gram. No.
schoolers are, again, like you said, like getting sexually involved earlier. Whatever
it's the Cardi B music.
Whatever it is, it's happening, and we need to be able to address it, and students need to be able to be equipped with the skills to understand how to have safe sex. If parents aren't having those conversations at home and middle schoolers are getting pregnant anyways, like why can we not include that in the school so they have some form of information?
Again, it just goes back to the fact that so many of this issue is just not black and white. It really is 50 Shades of Gray, because like there is just no one-size-fits-all approach to the way we educate our children.
What age do you think sex ed should be taught in schools? Like starting at what age?
Probably at some point during secondary school, because if we're talking about it scientifically, kids need to understand that science is a body of knowledge that we're building together. This is what we currently understand about human anatomy.
As far as like actually getting into intercourse and the details of all of that, in my experience, I usually at least start giving that understanding around 7, 8 years old.
I think that sex ed is a lifelong discussion, and it starts, as soon as you can communicate. Now, that doesn't mean that you are giving a high schooler's curriculum to a 3-year-old, but I'm already talking about consent and using proper anatomical language with my children, and that's where it begins and it ends in adulthood.
I think as long as it happens in a way such that, to the point you were making, that like kids are being protected, that's what I would say we prioritize.
I would say go back to the way it was when I was in elementary school. They separated the boys and the girls, and the girls watched a video about their period and all these things. The guys watched another video. Yeah, it was health class. And then we didn't talk about sex education, the actual contraception, all of those things until high school.
I think we need to separate health education from sex education. Health education should be lifelong. No sex ed for now, the way it's being taught in a lot of these states.
Let's talk a little bit about other things that fall under the responsibility of what teachers do in the classrooms. What is CRT?
Critical race theory in reality is this complex legal institution that relates race to all of the institutions of America since its founding and since its birth. And it's something that I've never learned about in my classroom. I don't have any friends that have learned about it in their classrooms. It's something that's often taught on the graduate level or the undergraduate level. So I think that it's kind of not a great term to use in reference to conversations surrounding K-12 education, because it's not actually something that's even on the docket for consideration.
That was a perfect description.
God damn! Oh yeah, bruh. Listen, bruh. Don't talk to her, bruh. Please. She is way above you. She is way above your pay grade, homie. Not you, but
the docket for consideration.
Homie sitting next to her.
Perfect description. I could not have done a better description if I tried.
It is in our schools. I saw the lessons that contain critical race theory in California.
It said the words critical race.
It said the words critical race theory.
And
yes.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong because some states
Look
have
at the
implemented
fucking crazy,
CRT.
bruh.
And
yes.
Look at the fucking look at us.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong because some states have implemented CRT into their curriculum. It means different things for different districts. So this is about to be a very complicated conversation.
So in my district, and this is in California, they're requiring a class called ethnic studies in order to graduate. And in the class, they were taught about critical race theory. They were taught the definition. They were taught to analyze school policy through critical race theory, and they were taught how critical race theory is beneficial to analyze the U.S. It's basically like this idea that every institution in America, every institution, that interaction that you have has some sort of element of race, and usually there's a hierarchy of oppressed versus oppressor. And there are kids in America in K through 12 that are being taught that, and I'm so tired of people saying that's not happening when it is. And then when I expose it, I'm being called racial slurs and names for exposing it. And I'm like, come on, guys. So I think we need to stop saying it's not being taught in America and change it to should it be taught in America, because it is. It is. There are teachers that are teaching this.
So there's a recent bill that was passed in Texas called Senate Bill 3, and it completely revamped Texas's curriculum standards and basically eliminated all requirements for teaching of history education in Texas that relate to diverse perspectives. So teachers can go through the entirety of K through 12 education without ever talking about slavery as an institution, even though it's thoroughly ingrained into just the history, just the basic facts of America's history.
My understanding, I don't see the banning of slavery being taught in
It's
Texas.
not the banning.
Yeah.
The issue is that it's no longer.
I know that bill.
It's no longer required.
I know that bill, and I know it also states that you're not supposed to teach it in a way that causes mental anguish.
So it does not ban it. It doesn't ban the talking of the institution of slavery, but it does create a loophole for teachers to never touch on the topic at any point in a child's education. And that is something that is happening. And it's something that is happening to peers of mine. It is something that is happening predominantly in communities outside of, I guess, my home city of Dallas, but having traveled and having talked to students across the state of Texas, I can confidently say that there are teachers who are not teaching very key facts of American history because critical race theory conversations have so clouded the teaching of history as an entire whole.
And it's not often called CRT anymore. It's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's called all these different names and labels because of how divisive of a thing that it is. And I think at the end of the day, the big thing here is that let's teach Black history. No one on the right is saying, do not teach Black history, do not teach slavery. If we forget those lessons of the past, we're bound to repeat them. But what we're also saying is that stop being vindictive towards white people for being white. No one alive today was a slave, and no one alive today owned slaves. And so for white children to sit in a classroom and be blamed for sins that they themselves did not commit is wrong. For Black people, for Black children to sit in a classroom and be told that because of the color of your skin, well, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're really not gonna go that far because the society hates you, and then you have all these structural barriers preventing your success, that is also wrong. That is not lessons of hope. That is not lessons of opportunity, and I think that is what schools should be be about. You can't create the next generation of leaders if they are never capable of seeing themselves as leaders, right? And I think like that is what CRT, unfortunately, in some ways, it does to young children of color.
What CRT means to me is obviously really different from what it means to you. And when you were saying before, like, kids are being anguished, I am not for kids feeling guilty about being born in the body they were born in. That's not what I taught.
What did you teach?
I mean, what did I teach? Well, for one thing, I taught about slavery. For another thing, I taught about like the ripple effects of slavery that we're still feeling today. In no way saying that people of color are less than or can't be, or no, not the opposite. Saying like people have persevered through things that I myself as a white person will never understand.
To really make this micro, the way I see it is there is no reason that
Did you see
kids
the
of a certain
dodge?
age really make this.
Did you
like
see the
people
dodge? though?
saying that taught about like the ripple effects of slavery that we're still feeling today. In no way saying.
Ooh, it was that fucking dodge, bro. That was like the fucking. I was like, I thought Black Man was coming after. I was like, all right, wait a second, back up,
like,
bro.
The
Don't do it.
ripple effects of slavery that we're still
Don't get
feeling
my
today.
bro.
In no way saying that people of color are less than or
That
can't
dodge.
be, or no, not the opposite. Saying like people have persevered through things that I myself as a white person will never understand.
To really make this micro, the way I see it is there is no reason that kids of a certain age, right, because it's different teaching to a 6-year-old and teaching to a 17-year-old or in college, shouldn't learn about the history of slavery, the history of redlining, the history of Italians being lynched in this country, et cetera, looking at the facts and looking at some of the horrible things that have happened so we can learn from it. That is a totally different conversation than when you've got instances like in Cupertino, California, where you have 7 and 8-year-olds who are being sat down and said, okay, time to do a privilege exercise.
That's what happened in
Let's
Miami.
write out, where you are on the power prism. Because that can create situations where students have warped views of themselves, especially if they're young. And I don't think
They
it's
did
appropriate
that shit.
because of the emotional impact it can have on them.
If people are actually being sat down being like, if you're white, you're an oppressor and you're bad. That is not okay. That is not CRT. That is not critical race theory, and that is not culturally responsive teaching.
So it's not necessarily being blatantly said, but it's being implied over and over again.
Okay, there is definitely a way to teach CRT without it putting anybody down. But it's like, hey, just so y'all know, if you're interested, there's different types of racism. There's the idea of racism as you treat someone differently because they're a certain color. And yeah, you could be racist to a white person if you don't like them for being white. Now, there's also systemic racism because we took a whole bunch of slaves from another country and brought them over here. But with that said, right, there's different types of racism here. And you can expose yourself to different ones at different times, but you don't have to make anyone feel bad. You just say the statistics the way they are. You're not saying one person's good, one person's bad. You just go over the definitions.
How should we be teaching race?
Well, I don't think we should be teaching white privilege in the classroom.
But teaching about race, like if you're, designing your ideal.
I don't think we should be
setting.
teaching white
How do you
privilege
think
in
race
classes.
should be
Is that
taught?
because you think it doesn't exist, or because they can't handle it, or like
I think
what?
again, when it comes to the privilege discussion, like that's a great conversation for you to have with your child. But I don't think that taxpayer-funded hatred should be something that we allow in our schools.
Okay, bro, real talk though, like brother to brother. Teaching white privilege does not inherently mean black people are less. Factually incorrect, right? So
What is white privilege?
White privilege is the idea of white people may have benefits that fall in a societal structure. Because they are white, they have advantages, not
Such
because, such as, for example, if you send out a resume and you make one name a white name and the other name the classic.
What's a white name?
The white name was John, for example, right?
I know Black Johns.
Okay, no, hear me out. Let me finish,
Okay.
okay? We did a study. I didn't do this study, but we did a study where basically it was sent out 2 different resumes. They were the exact same.
Okay.
Right? One was given a classic white name. The other was given the name Jamal.
Okay.
The white name got 2 times more callbacks.
And
right?
I disagree with what you're
but
saying.
the
in that
idea
sense.
of white privilege, right? The idea that somebody that is white may have an advantage does not inherently mean you are teaching a black individual they cannot accomplish great things. That is completely separate. So we're talking about fake biological science and social science. We're not even in the same building at school right now.
Well, again,
In regards to these like audit studies about like what is a white name, it's not necessarily that the name itself is white. It's that the perceiver, the person that is reading the resumes, for some strange reason, feels like when they see a white name that they are on their team, or that there are positive stereotypes associated with people being white. That's what we're talking about when we talk about white privilege, is that, okay, if Oprah goes into a store, people might not assume that she can afford the things in that store because she's a black woman. even though she is Oprah. But if someone was white and goes into the same store, some people, because of their own racial stereotypes, might believe that they can afford it. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about white privilege, is the sort of systemic benefits that you get from society.
No, I want to add, though, what you're describing, though, is discrimination. But to call it privilege, when the reality is, let's say you take the white person who would be considered white trash, you would get the same result from them. So I don't think you can necessarily assume that that's because of race.
Nah, Cletus would at least make it to the fucking interview. Cletus would make it in the door. He would get the call back and he would make it to the interview process before he got booted. There's that difference. Jamal wouldn't even get the call back. Jamal would be wondering whether they got his resume or not.
Definitely can't call it systemic because a personal decision to be discriminatory.
Should it be taught to our children?
Right. And
should it be, and should we be telling Black kids that you're going to get discriminated against because of the color of your skin, with loans, with redlining, blah, blah, blah?
there is a way to teach culturally responsive teaching without being narrow-minded, but it's hard. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Even if you talk about the systems in place that privilege different groups at different times in different spaces, I'm not saying that when you teach CRT, when you teach about the history of this country that has privileged certain groups and not privileged Black people, I think it's important to acknowledge that Black people have persevered throughout that. There's so much excellence. And I think that you do all kids a disservice when you say, okay, the history of Black people in this country or the history of women in this country is that they were oppressed the whole time and they weren't resisting. And then the Civil War happens and, the slaves are freed and the Black people just stopped resisting, economic injustice until the Civil Rights Movement. That is not the case of history in this country. And so I feel like it's very important if you're teaching about, race in this country, it's about resistance. It's about resistance to the power structure that suggests that some people deserve to get more if they work hard than another group of people if they work the same level.
And not just resistance, but resilience.
You mentioned history, and a lot of you are educators. I'm just curious, what do you think should or shouldn't be taught, when it comes to U.S. history in the K-12 environment?
So I think it's just this really unbalanced way that they're teaching it right now, especially the ones that are proponents of CRT, that's creating this narrative that it's all white people to blame when there was so many people involved in the transatlantic slave trade. The British were actually the ones that stopped it and used their own resources to stop the slave trading ships from continuing. They went to Africa to stop them. Hey, stop bringing them to the coast because we're not buying them anymore. And so this idea that I just feel bad for our children because they're not being taught it in a perspective that is holistic, basically.
And even to this day, there are slaves in Libya held captive by Black people. So this is not a white and Black issue. But even with that said, I think leaving the public school system, even my peers, when we talk about this, we left with the idea that Black history is slavery and Jim Crow. And we're rarely talking about the Reconstruction era, the amount of senators and politicians we had post-slavery. It was just so many things that we did after slavery that we're being told we can't do today somehow. That is just asinine.
There's no conservative in America who's saying don't teach slavery in the classrooms, but if you're going to talk about slavery, to his point, let's talk about Madam C.J. Walker. Let's talk about George Washington Carver. Let's talk about all these Black people who have done some really incredible things that, in spite of quote-unquote systemic racism and all of these things, have achieved. Let's talk about Barack Obama. Let's talk about Kamala Harris. Why is every conversation that we have
That was hard for you to say, wasn't it? When you brought up Obama and Kamala, that was a little hard for you to say.
About Black people in the classroom, about us being in chains down
you're British,
no hope. That's a problem. And Black History Month, it's American history. Let's talk about that too. Those are important inspirational stories that are not taught in the classroom.
Do you think that the fight against CRT is hurting the efforts for more diversity and inclusion?
I don't want diversity and inclusion. We already have that.
What I mean by that is you said you want more Black stories of hope and success and all of that. That's what I mean.
But that's unfortunately not what CRT is. Yeah.
I know.
That's actually exactly what CRT is.
I think what's really clear is
that's actually
that's what I mean.
But that's unfortunate.
Or Black stories of hope and success and all of that. That's what I mean.
But that's unfortunately not what CRT is.
Yeah. I know.
That's actually exactly what CRT is.
And forums like this, obviously literacy is a part of that, and I think there are other parts of that too, but the only way that we can move forward is if, instead of just talking about what do we talk to kids about, I think we have to first get better about how do we talk to each other about this.
I think we have to recenter education about actually preparing young people for the real world and acknowledging the fact that we're not going to have a one-size-fits-all approach that works for every student across America. We have no room and no time, frankly, to teach all these divisive things because we have urban literacy rates that are down in the dumps. When those kids learn how to read, then we can talk about gender theory, CRT. But until we...
Yeah, and then you want to use the fucking, what was that program that they were talking about? The Pick School program, or the One Pick program? I don't remember. It was fucking stupid. But yeah, do you think those fucking parents are gonna be fucking having even having vouchers to fucking turn in? I don't think so.
We have children who are proficient and above a third grade reading level, and a majority of those kids in cities like Chicago and Detroit, we don't need to be even having a conversation about whether or not students should be learning about privilege and
The number one policy thing that I come back to that we must do to improve K-12 education is to put in school choice at a universal level. It's far too overdue.
Bullshit.
It will incentivize the public schools to fix a lot of the problems that they have. It'll put the power back into the parent. Thing that I come back to that we must do to improve K-12 education is to put in school choice at a
Yeah, school choice. That's the fucking dumb shit that they're talking about. Where it's like you get the parents get vouchers, and then they use those vouchers to turn into a school, and that school gets funded for that child. It's so fucking stupid, though. It's like the dumbest thing. Like those fucking underprivileged parents aren't gonna get vouchers. Yeah, bro, everybody gets vouchers. All they gotta do is pay taxes, and then they also gotta vote, and then they have to. It's like, bro. Nobody's turning in those fucking vouchers. Some of those kids are fucking enrolling themselves in the school. And you're telling me, do they get the voucher? Like, come on.
Universal level. It's far too overdue. It will incentivize the public schools to fix a lot of the problems that they have. It'll put the power back into the parent to get their child an education that best meets their needs. And I do think that if we're going to build the best generation of young people, then we should start with teaching them tolerance, kindness, and active listening before we get into racial privilege theory, gender privilege theory, etc.
I think that it's so important to get back to critical thinking and understanding that the way that we raise the next generation is also, not necessarily staying fixed ourselves. I think you were saying that, your wife is learning with the kids. And if we continue to learn about, hey, how do we do this better for ourselves? How do we treat each other better? The more that we do that, the better that we will be able to collaborate with people we disagree with. The better that we'll be able to make a curriculum that actually does, speak about the excellence that you're able to do.
It'll be fun.
Continue to challenge yourself and strive and push forward.
On this panel, a really huge set of diverse opinions. There wasn't really a bad guy. It was, we all wanted the same.
No, there was a
thing,
couple bad guys.
Different ways to get there. So I just think the collaboration is really what I'm taking away, because you can collaborate with anyone.
I think we need to make sacrifices for our children's future and prioritize them a bit more today. Aside from that, if you choose a public school route, I'm all for the collaborative effort. But what that needs to look like is parents showing up to the PTA meetings, showing up to the school board meetings, knowing and being inside the classroom and being actively involved regardless of which route you take.
I think we put too much faith into the education of our children in public education when we should be doing more of that ourselves. And we need to make sure that we put more power into the parents and empower them to take control of their child's education.
We just need to stop burning down the house. I truly believe that we can
burning down the house.
If we stop arguing with each other and start pouring more resources and really buckling down to save this thing that really in turn saves us as a society, we can do it. We just need to stop chasing all of these boogeymans that we are just kind of seeing in the media just to polarize everybody and make everybody so angry. We need to stop that and save what we have, because what we have can be great and we need it.
Okay, I think that will do it for us. Thank you all so much for taking your time and for sharing your opinions and being so respectful of each other. Really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
You did it.
You did it. You passed.
Let's go.
Now what?
We get the awards for best panel, and then we get our picture taken.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Got that.
I learned something on the education panel today.
I live in somewhat of an echo chamber, so to be able to break free from that, to learn from new people, learn from new perspectives was really honestly a great experience.
Critical theory should not replace critical thinking.
There's a panelist who believes that, there is a place for critical race theory within our schools. I don't believe that.
What I hope for the future of education is we have parents more involved with their children's education and future.
Smile
Smile
fight.
fight is like when someone says a point you disagree with, but you can't quite do that. You're just like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's a crazy bitch right there, though, bro.
I
know
would
if you
totally
wanna
trust
get
my
into
future kids and my current students with you.
See, I will.
No, you don't have to say the same.
I'm
You
not
don't
gonna
have to say the same thing.
Okay.
That's so funny. It's not a bad video.